you were when you and Misty were spending so much time together, and a little bit about her and y'all's relationship as cousins.
Yeah, she was amazing. She's always been a big sister to us. Our older sister didn't always live with us, and so looking up to her was like everything for us. I mean, I was 8 years old at the time, and it may seem like you're I don't know, it's you're too young to remember anything at that age, but that's not true. You're really not. It's kind of amazing how clearly things are when you remember yourself back then at that time. And I there's times where I try to think to myself, can I remember what she looks like? Just me, not through her picture, not through pictures or through other people or whatever, but just me. Do I remember? Do I have memories of her? And I do. I definitely have memories of her. And I mean, they're not. It's not always easy to talk about her or memories of her, because it comes back around every time you come back around to the the trauma that came with her becoming missing, and then I mean, it's kind of different from a kid's angle, especially now that I'm a parent. I think back and I'm like, man, I remember how scared I was. I was traumatized and worried for her. And looking at the parents and the people and the cops and the craziness that was just running amok, your your fear just overwhelms you, and you kind of almost check out a little bit. And we were out there looking for her too. Our parents were out there. We're looking. We're going door to door, neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend. We're trying to think of anything we can think of that the parents might not know. Like, oh, hey, Misty, liked this boy or talked about that or whatever, just things that, parents wouldn't probably necessarily think of or know. And, we probably would have told on every single secret we had of hers to bring her back. But she was really a good girl when it comes down to, she had crushes on boys and everything like that. But I mean, it wasn't anything like she's 11. I mean, there was no like sexual seriousness about it. It was just, kid cute crush. And, we played games and put on makeup and played dress up in house. And, she was always, that older sibling sister, she never fought with us, and she was never mean to us. And, she never put us down. We always, had someone to talk to and someone to look up to and look forward to seeing. And, missing her is still to this day, it's the same as it was then, except for you have this huge gap of life that you've lived that you're like, well, what would you do if she was here today? You'd share your memories with her. She'd be a part of your life every day. And I mean, I think about her brothers and how close I am to them right now. And I've always been close to her brothers. John's lived a little bit further away from us, but Josh he'd come and see us every single year for the last 10 years at least. And then, I talk to him almost daily. So, we never lost track of each other. And I think about that. I think about, what would it be like if she had kids, and our closeness as cousins, was passed down to our kids and her kids, and, what would happen. And, I look at my daughters and my kids, and I think of what I would do if one of them came up missing or something happened. And it's so scary that like my mom said before, you just don't let your kids out of your sight. You don't let them do anything that normal kids do. My son gets mad at me because of it all the time. He's like, you don't let me do anything my friends do. And I'm like, well, I'm not their parent. We've kind of had a different lifestyle than some of the other parents that I know. They're more loose and carefree with their kids, and I don't see myself ever being like that. And missing, the childhood that we had, at that time was completely different after we found out she had been murdered, after she was missing and then murdered. You never get that back. It never comes back. And, we were really close. It wasn't just we were cousins, we were sisters, and she took care of us. And, we could always count on her being there. If we ever had any problems or anybody needed to talk to somebody, she was always there. And she was older than us, enough older than me that she would keep an eye on us and stuff, but like babysit us type deal, play with us while she babysat us. But yeah, she was just an amazing person overall. Had amazing personality, and she was kind and she was gentle. She loved animals. She really loved animals a lot. Every animal. There wasn't an animal that she didn't love. And she took care of everything around her. She was very courteous and tidy and neat. And that's why things that were being talked about back when she came up missing just didn't make sense. Like her taking off or running away or being involved with a boy or whatever. I overheard cops asking questions and family members, adults telling the police, everything that we could think of, and I remember talking to the police myself. I remember the police questioning us kids, especially after she was found dead. The questioning came back, I don't, I guess, because Misty had been in her house so much, she was, as far as I remember, I know she was probably supposed to stay that night at our house, or at least it had been talked about. And I know that, the kids had gotten in trouble for something at home, something stupid, or so like not cleaning their room or something. And I think it was kind of more used as a punishment that they didn't get to come stay the night. But I remember the adults, all of them talking about, well, the what ifs. Well, what if we would have just had the kids here? Or what if, this, that, and the other? I mean, you can pretty much wear yourself right into the ground quick with the what ifs. The what ifs to this day still make me crazy. And, I've called Corporal Martin quite a few times myself, trying to find out information, anything I can. Talk to him for hours on the phone before, trying to remember anything I could, to try to help the police. Sorry,
I can't imagine when you're 8 years old just how overwhelming all of that was. Like you said, one, that's happening to your cousin who's like a sister, having all, police to search everything. That had to be just so tough as a child, and stayed with you.
It did. It has. I think it always will be with me. And it's completely changed I think about, well, what if this wouldn't have happened to Misty? What if this wouldn't have happened to our family? What would we have done differently? Who would we be now? And, more than anything, I wonder who she'd be. She definitely deserved to be somebody. And just, our older sister, we're really close. We were really close with her. She just didn't live with us at the time. She lived back and forth between her dad and my mom. And having that older sister sibling was like, it was huge. It was a huge deal. And an extra person to talk to, but she was in between the age of our older sister and us, so it was even better. We had more of a closeness in that age difference than I did with my oldest sister. But I mean, she still was young enough. She was older enough than us that she could keep an eye on us and be the older mentor, but she was still young enough that she was not too young to play with us and, play games with us and have fun with us and sleepovers and, all the, closeness and secret telling that we had as kids. We had a lot of secrets. And probably drove our parents crazy with those secrets. The things you're supposed to do as a kid, the things you're supposed to be able to do as a child, we got to do until it was just completely cut off. It was just like a diseased limb just got cut off of our family, and it changed everybody and everything. And it's a horrible feeling to wonder, like my mom said, both my sisters and we all had severe nightmares, and it wasn't just about her being missing and then, being murdered. It was about all the things we went through, overseen, overheard, the places we went, the people we saw and ran into, some of the horrible questions and comments that were made about, well, Misty probably ran away or, stupid stuff like that. I mean, we didn't understand where any of that was coming from, or why they were saying it. and kind of at a younger age as we were, it kind of makes you want to say more than you can, but can't really. I mean, the cops just look at you, you're just a kid, and I mean, at this day and age, 8-year-olds, I mean, my 8-year-old at this time, she knows more about my phone sometimes than I do, so I mean, as young as we are, as young as we were at that time, it's always going to be forever etched into our mind and into our hearts and our soul. It's never going to go anywhere. We're never going to lose it. And it's changed us forever. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, just personally, I was very close with my cousins as well. Like, same thing, we were together all the time and was more like sisters too, with our family. So that's how, I mean, I understand what you're saying when you describe that aspect. And I just can't imagine that type of loss. And especially, yeah, you want to be just like your older cousin. You want to do the things that she does and everything like that. Yeah, I can't imagine that. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, this has impacted you forever, and I know you guys are still hoping and wanting answers. Can you kind of speak about how, you're also picking up the torch and keeping that going to fight for answers for Misty, for justice for her?
Yeah. So I mean, like I said before, I've spoken to Corporal Martin numerous times over the years. I honestly think there was one year, I think it was 2012 when my son was born, my 11-year-old when my son was born, and I just remember watching him sleep in and thinking about, if anybody was to ever take him or hurt him or anything, what would I do? And it just, I think it lit me up again. And there was a gap for a minute there when I was, teenage to younger years where you don't want to forget. That's not the right way to put it, but you want to kind of set that pain aside long enough to try to feel normal, live and feel normal. Because my mom would make us kids crazy. We couldn't go do anything with any of our friends, go anywhere with anybody. She had to know everybody. I had to always bring my little sister with me everywhere I went. We couldn't go anywhere or do anything ourselves. Couldn't be ourselves. And I feel like we lost that when we lost Misty, and we lost it forever. And there's no getting it back in any way. And I mean, there's a horrible sadness to that. And then there's also like that holding a piece of her near us and close to us always in that. So it's a good and bad thing. I mean, it's good that, it changed things for us as a parent, as being more willing to look at people and look at our situations and make sure that we weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time or with the wrong people. We tried not to put ourselves in those situations, I think, more than we would have if Misty wouldn't have come up missing and been murdered and found the way she was. I think maybe like my mom had said before, maybe there's a little reason for everything. That things happen for a reason. And, I feel like Misty's with me to this day. I used to sit and talk to her when I was a kid. I used to sit in my backyard and talk to her. I'll talk to her in heaven, or at least, not that she talked back to me, but I would tell her secrets as I got older and talk to her. Like, I didn't want her to be forgotten or not by me at least. I didn't want her to feel forgotten by me. I just, I wanted her to know that even though I was a kid, that she was still with me and that I would do anything I could to help find who did this to her, what happened to her, to find closure for my family, for my grandmother, my mother, her mother, her siblings, us. All of us have been torn in a million pieces, and those pieces have been just mixed up with everybody else's pieces, and it's kind of hard to find yourself in that. And when I started talking to Corporal Martin, he had told me that Misty's case was one of 11 that he had sitting in his drawer at all times, and that he said to me, and his exact words were, he believes that Misty is one of 3 cases that he believes could still be solved, that he has high hopes of being solved that he has leads on and he feels will be solved. And that made me feel better at that time. I thought, well, if this is a case that could be solved, then it's better than not having any hope at all, even though it's been so long, so many years. We'll never give up hope. We'll never stop thinking about her. We'll never stop missing her. We'll never stop trying to find out what happened to her, who did this. And for not just for us, but for anybody and everybody out there who could have been hurt or damaged by this person, that person or persons who caused this problem, who caused her life to be taken or took her life themselves. They took life away from us too. Like, we'll never get it back, and it's changed us forever. We'll never be different. We'll never be able to tell our kids, just go ahead and go take off, go play for hours at the park or something. We're just not that. We're not those people anymore, and it makes me feel bad too sometimes. Like my kids are like, oh, you're like so hard on us, like you're harsh, and I'm like, it's not about being harsh or hard. I'm just worried. And it's hard to get that in the back of your mind and have it go anywhere else or be anything else. You just can't. It's impossible. And even though we were young.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Even though we were young, it's still the same for us now, even as adults.
It just has such ripple effects on so many lives.
Yeah.
And so many generations of lives, too.
Yeah, it does. I actually found, I was doing some research on Mistie back in 2012, like I said, when I first touched base with Corporal Martin. I actually reached out on the internet, found different clippings and things in the news, and I had actually ordered a picture of her that was an actual photograph of her used during one of the news sessions that they'd taken. It had some notes taken on the back of it, and I actually got that off of, I can't think of what it is, but eBay, there we go. Off of eBay is actually where I found it, and I was kind of shocked to see that and find something like that that had to do with her. It literally just had her name, and it was on eBay, and I'm like, what is this? And I clicked on it, and they sent it to me, and it was a photograph that they had used and put notes on it some point, and it just made me want to look a little bit more, just holding that and knowing that that was there at that time, that'd been passed around between cops and she'd been talked about around that in one way or point or another, kind of held a piece of her. And it just made me want to dig further and dig deeper and find out more. And for about 5 years, that's what I did constantly. I just drove that Corporal Martin crazy. And my grandma moved out here, and my mom and my grandma also spoke to them, so I kind of laid off a little bit because my grandma liked to talk to him often, and it was good for her, I think. And now that she's gone, I think it'll be good for my mom to continue to talk to him and keep up on things. And like she had said, and like I'd said, one way or another, between myself and my sisters and her siblings, her brothers, we'll keep up with it. I mean, we hope that eventually there'll come a time where you'll be able to put DNA in a system and immediately come out with somebody, whether it's through a family member, a sibling, whatever it is. They've got to have a way to do it. There's got to be a way to do it. And it's frustrating to know that this isn't a case that didn't have any evidence. There isn't any blood or semen or evidence of any trauma to her or anything. This is just like a cold cut, we just don't have anything type deal. No, they've got some stuff to work with. So it's frustrating to us to think of there's cases being solved after 45 years, 55 years, some of them even more, because of DNA. And I'm like, but they can't solve this with DNA and all. Like my mom had said before, where was she for 2 days? I mean, we remember searching for her, vigorously searching for her, going door to door, neighbor to neighbor, places we'd never been, talking to numerous groups of people we would have never spoken to before. And, we remember watching our parents and all the adults breaking down continuously. And, a constant hugging from the adults, of pinching and hugging and loving on us that, we probably, in other words, probably wouldn't have happened as much, just constantly being hugged by people you didn't even know. And having that feeling like, this is bad. Something's wrong. And, instead of having hope right away when we found out she was missing, I thought the worst. And I really did think the worst. And, when you talk to my sister, she'll tell you about games that we had played and stuff that had freaked us out pretty good. Like the day before she went missing, we had played a game, and I'll let my sister tell you about that. But finding out what had happened to her and then how she died and where she was found, it was super freaky that we'd been, playing games like with her about stuff that, her, like how we'd need to be rescued and things like, just stuff like that. But little kid games, you'd play house or cops and robbers or whatever. You went from doing that to never wanting to do anything like that ever again. You don't even want to play like games like that. You just never want to think about it even. And the only time you do think about things like that, no matter what, if it's a cold case on TV or a TV show or whatever, Misty pops in my head constantly, or if I see something, I'm like, I want to contact these people and see if they can help us with Misty. There's got to be something out there that someone can do. It's so frustrating for our family. It's frustrating that my grandma died and didn't get to know, we didn't have closure for our family before my grandma died. And I remember telling Corporal Martin that a few times, more than anything, I'd like to see my grandma get closure. My grandpa passed away; he didn't get closure, and I believe beliefs like my mom as well. Where I believe that we pass away, we go to heaven. I believe that I do, but it's the here and the now, the closure that we could use and need. The fact that this person's never been found freaks me out. It freaks me out that they know who we are and we don't know who they are. In one way or another, they know who we are and we don't know who they are. And it's super scary. It's super scary for us. It's for us, ourselves personally, for our children, for our families, our friends, everybody who we have around us. You never know with these types of things what could come back around or what could happen. And it's scary. And it just puts you on full alert all the time. And that will never change. That'll never go away. Ever.
Do you believe Misty's case can be solved?
I do. I do believe it can be solved, and it's not just because of the DNA or because of a feeling. I've spoken with Corporal Martin, and I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with him, but what he said to me about one of 3 cases of the 11 sitting in his drawer that he thinks will be solved. That gave me a lot of hope. But it's been years now. It's been years since he said that to me. So to not have that closure and then know that I feel like she's not been put to rest. She hasn't been put to proper rest, because she doesn't have that, justice that we all are seeking for her. And until we get that, there's just no resting for us either. So I hope it will be solved. I think it will be. I think there's a possibility of it being solved for sure. Thankfully, there's DNA. It would probably be worse if there wasn't DNA. It's kind of a catch-22. We're grateful there's DNA, and we're not grateful about the DNA because that shows that she went through more trauma than we wished she would have. You just kind of hope that it was a quick. I hate to say this the way I'm saying it, but a quick death instead of being prolonged, tormented, tortured. We don't want to hear that. We don't, but we want the truth at the same time. So it's kind of hard to say, but yeah, I do think it'll be solved. I hope it will be.
Is there anything about Misty that you really want her to be remembered by, or something you really want, a message you really want people to know you think is important?
I hope that anybody whose life that's been touched or moved by Misty, I hope that, it's been for the best, and that it hasn't been in a bad way, because she's such a beautiful, amazing person inside and out. And I don't want her to be remembered just for her death and for what happened to her. I really don't. I want people to remember her for who she was. And although she was only 11 years old, she had a lot of life and a lot of love that she gave out, and that, that meant a lot to all of us. That was taken from us, that we wish we could have back more than anything. I'd trade pretty much anything to get her back, to get her life back for her, and know what she would have become. Think about it all the time, what she would have become. All the hopes and dreams she had and all the things she used to talk about. of her becoming, she wanted to be a vet, or, she wanted to take care of animals. She loved them so much, things like that. I think about what she would have become and what that would have done for our family, our lives, done for us as in happiness wise, than compared to how we are with her situation now, which is traumatized and completely devastated by her loss, and we always will be. I'm the one that my grandmother gave me her ring when I was 16 years old, and she pretty much never took it off. So it was a big deal for me to get that, and I have her little purse, and I mean, it means everything to me. Sometimes, I've never taken that ring off my finger since I was 16. It's stayed on my finger ever since, all these years. I mean, it's actually kind of bent. I've caught it a few times on things. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to get it off and get it taken care of. I've never taken it off, never once since I was 16 years old. Just to feel close to her, it feels good.
Yeah, you have a piece of her with you
Always.
every day.
Yeah, and I actually named my first baby after her. My oldest daughter's middle name is May. That was my very first baby, and I felt close enough to Misty that I wanted to brighten up our lives by bringing Misty back into our lives a little bit, by giving her name to one of my children, and that was to my firstborn. Her middle name is May. And every time I looked at her, heard her name, I would think of Misty, but in a positive way, because then I'm looking at my own child and I'm thinking about her life and the things that she's become or will become, and it makes me happy. And that's a big deal for me. So that's something I'd definitely like people to know and remember, that she made such an impact on us as kids and on my parents as adults, as anybody, that it's a good enough impact that she'll never be forgotten, and she's going to be a part and a piece of us forever. My daughter can give that name to one of her kids, and hopefully she'll live on forever through that, and she'll live on forever through us, and she will. Until they find out something, we'll never give up. So yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say I didn't think to ask?
No, I don't think so. I think you pretty much covered everything with my mom. And my sister will talk to you as well. But it was really nice to meet you. I mean,
No, I'm
see
glad I
ya.
got to speak with you, and I really appreciate you, again, taking the time and talking to us. And I know it's not easy, and so it really means a lot.
It's definitely not easy, and I think that's why I get a babbling, because I mean it's hard to not get emotional. You feel like you can just talk and get it out. It's not as emotional. It's better, but yeah, it's definitely an emotional thing. Anytime any of us bring up Misty, we all bawl, we all cry, and sometimes it's a funny, good cry. Sometimes it's a horrific, sad. We need justice cry. So she's remembered both ways, and until they get the person or persons who did this, until justice served, we're gonna never give up, never. So, thank you for your help.
Thank you. I appreciate
It was nice to meet you.
Stay there.
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of wired in there. So, what I was going to say is that ring on? You have that ring on, right?
Yeah, I
So
do.
it's this little one here.
Yep.
So I didn't want to. I want to take a picture of it. I don't want to
Okay.
be taking. You can hold it up here somewhere. If
Okay.
you were playing with it just a little bit.
I
So
was.
You can do that or whatnot. I just don't want to be. I just want to try to get a picture of that if I can.
Oh, okay.